I was sitting at my childhood dining room table during Sunday dinner when my mother casually mentioned between bites of pot roast that my sister Angela would be moving into my spare bedroom next weekend. My father nodded approvingly, discussing logistics like I wasn't even there. They'd already planned everything: her moving truck, which room she would take, how long she would stay. I quietly chewed my food, letting them talk, knowing they had absolutely no idea I'd moved to a completely different apartment across town 3 weeks ago. The mashed potatoes grew cold on my fork as I listened to my parents orchestrate my life, like they were planning a neighborhood barbecue. This wasn't new. This was the Sydney Family Playbook, Chapter 1 through Infinity. And I had been the unwilling star of this show for 28 years. My mother was already sketching room layouts on her napkin, explaining how Angela could arrange the furniture in what she believed was my spare bedroom. My father chimed in with his thoughts on splitting utility costs and establishing household chores. Neither of them had asked my opinion. Neither of them had even looked in my direction since the announcement. I remembered being 7 years old when they decided I would take piano lessons. No discussion, no asking if I wanted to learn piano. They simply enrolled me and informed me on a Tuesday that lessons started Thursday, when I protested that I wanted to play baseball. Instead, my mother explained that piano would be more beneficial for my development. Baseball was too rough, too unpredictable. Piano had structure. The pattern continued through high school when they chose my advanced placement classes. I wanted to take shop and automotive repair because I loved working with my hands, figuring out how things function. Instead, I found myself in calculus and chemistry because those subjects would look better on college applications. My preferences were merely suggestions to be evaluated and usually dismissed. College selection followed the same script. I researched schools with strong computer programming departments because technology fascinated me and I enjoyed solving complex problems through code. My parents researched schools with prestigious business programs because those graduates earned higher starting salaries and had better networking opportunities. Guess which path I ended up taking? Even my first apartment hunting experience had been managed by my parents. They found the place I'd been living in until 3 weeks ago. They negotiated the lease terms, decided on the neighborhood, and chose the floor plan. I was 25 years old working full-time as a software developer, and they were still making my housing decisions. Angela had always been different in their eyes. Where I was the responsible one, the backup plan, the safety net, she was the creative spirit who needed understanding and support. When Angela dropped out of college the first time to pursue photography, my parents called it artistic exploration. When I suggested changing my major from business to computer science during my junior year, they called it irresponsible and threatened to stop paying tuition. My sister had moved back home 4 times since graduating high school. Each time it was temporary. Each time she had a new plan, a fresh start, a different approach to independence. Photography led to jewelry making, which led to freelance writing, which led to personal training, which led to selling handmade soaps at farmers markets. None of these ventures lasted more than 8 months, but my parents called each transition a learning experience. Meanwhile, I had been steadily building a career in software development, earning promotions, increasing my salary, and establishing financial stability. But somehow, my success had made me the family resource center. When Angela needed her car repaired, my parents suggested I help with the costs since I had steady income. When my cousin needed a job reference, they volunteered my professional reputation. When my grandmother needed someone to drive her to medical appointments, they assumed I could adjust my work schedule. My father was now explaining the timeline for Angela's arrival. Saturday morning, 9 o'clock, the moving truck would arrive. He had already arranged for my uncle to help with the heavy furniture. My mother had purchased bedding and bathroom accessories because Angela was going through a difficult time and could use some comfort items. I watched them plan my weekend, my space, my routines, and my financial obligations without asking a single question about my thoughts or availability. They discussed grocery shopping strategies to accommodate Angela's dietary preferences. They talked about parking arrangements, since she would need the space closest to the building entrance for safety reasons. They planned television viewing schedules since Angela enjoyed different programs than I typically watched. The conversation moved to longer-term expectations. My mother suggested I could help Angela update her resume and practice interview skills. My father thought I should introduce her to my professional contacts in case any job opportunities developed. They assumed I would adjust my social calendar to include family activities since Angela would be feeling vulnerable and needed emotional support. I finished my pot roast while they mapped out the next several months of what they believed would be my life. The meat was perfectly seasoned, tender, and comforting, exactly like every Sunday dinner my mother had prepared for over 2 decades. The routine of family meals had always been reliable, predictable, and safe. But tonight that familiar comfort felt suffocating. My mother looked directly at me for the first time since the announcement began. Her expression showed complete confidence that I would embrace this arrangement with enthusiasm. After all, I always did. I always adjusted, accommodated, and adapted to whatever the family needed. She smiled warmly and patted my hand. Sydney, honey, I know this is short notice, but family takes care of family. Angela really needs this right now, and you have such a stable, comfortable place. My father nodded approvingly. You've always been the responsible one, son. We knew we could count on you to step up when your sister needed help. The weight of their expectations settled around my shoulders, like a heavy coat I had been wearing for so long that I had forgotten it was removable. They assumed my agreement because they had trained me to agree. They expected my cooperation because I had always cooperated. But tonight something felt different. Tonight I wasn't the same Sydney who automatically said yes to family demands. Tonight I had a secret that would change everything. They had no idea I had given my landlord notice, hired a moving company, and relocated to a completely different neighborhood 3 weeks ago. They had no idea that the spare bedroom they were planning to fill no longer belonged to me. They had no idea that I had deliberately chosen not to tell any family members my new address. The dining room clock ticked steadily above the hutch filled with my mother's china collection. Each second brought them closer to discovering that their carefully constructed plan had a fundamental flaw. I was no longer living in the apartment they thought I occupied. The front door opened with a dramatic bang that rattled the windows, followed by Angela's voice calling out before she had fully entered the house. Sorry, I'm late. Traffic was absolutely insane on Interstate 75, and then I couldn't find parking anywhere near here. My sister appeared in the dining room doorway looking like she had been through a windstorm. Her shoulder-length brown hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail with several strands falling across her face. She wore an oversized sweatshirt with paint stains across the front and jeans that had seen better days. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and her hands shook slightly as she set her purse on the side table. Angela, sweetheart, we saved you some dinner, my mother said, immediately rising to prepare a plate. Sit down and tell us how your week went. My sister collapsed into the chair across from me with visible relief. Actually, that's perfect timing. I was hoping to talk to everyone together about our new living situation. The casual way she said our new living situation made my stomach tighten. She was already claiming ownership of an arrangement that had been decided without my input in an apartment that I no longer occupied. Sydney and I have been texting about logistics all week, Angela continued, which was news to me since my phone had been suspiciously quiet. I'm so grateful that he offered to help me through this transition period. My mother set a heaping plate of pot roast, mashed potatoes, and green beans in front of Angela while my father refilled the water glasses. The family dinner rhythm continued seamlessly with everyone playing their familiar roles, except for the fact that nothing being discussed was actually real. Tell Sydney about what happened at your apartment complex, my mother prompted gently. Angela's composure cracked immediately. Her fork trembled against the plate as she began speaking. It's Travis, my ex-boyfriend. He won't leave me alone, and it's gotten really scary over the past month. This was the first I was hearing about any boyfriend, ex or otherwise. Angela and I talked maybe once every 2 weeks, usually brief conversations about work or weekend plans. She had never mentioned anyone named Travis during our recent phone calls. He started showing up at my apartment building about 6 weeks ago. She continued, her voice growing smaller. At first, I thought it was coincidental. Maybe he lived in the neighborhood or worked nearby. But then I realized he was watching my schedule, learning when I came and went. My father's jaw tightened. Did you call the police? Multiple times. They said since he wasn't technically doing anything illegal, they couldn't help unless he actually threatened me or damaged my property. Angela took a shaky breath. So Travis got more creative. She described finding her car tires slashed in the apartment parking lot on 3 separate occasions. Each time the damage occurred overnight, when surveillance cameras couldn't capture clear footage of the perpetrator. The apartment complex security guard sympathized but explained that without video evidence or witnesses, they couldn't identify who was responsible. Travis had also begun appearing at Angela's workplace, a small marketing firm downtown. He would sit in the coffee shop across the street, watching the building entrance through the window. Her coworkers noticed the same man appearing daily for 2 weeks straight, always ordering a single cup of coffee that he would nurse for hours while staring at their office building. My boss started asking questions about whether I had any personal conflicts that might be affecting workplace safety, Angela said. I couldn't risk losing my job over Travis's harassment, so I tried to handle it privately. She had confronted Travis directly, meeting him in a public restaurant to ask him to stop following her. The conversation had gone horribly wrong. Travis accused her of leading him on, claimed they had a special connection that she was denying, and insisted that her rejection was just a phase she needed to work through. He told me that we belonged together and he wasn't going to give up until I realized that, Angela said. Then he started describing my daily routines in detail. What time I left for work, which grocery store I shopped at, what I ordered at restaurants. He knew everything about my life. My mother reached across the table to squeeze Angela's hand. Honey, why didn't you tell us sooner? Because I thought I could handle it myself, and because I was embarrassed. Angela wiped her eyes with her napkin. I met Travis at a photography workshop 3 months ago. He seemed charming and creative, really interested in my artistic projects. We went on maybe 8 dates before I realized he had some serious issues with jealousy and control. The relationship had escalated quickly in ways that made Angela uncomfortable. Travis wanted to spend every evening together. He questioned her friendships with other people, particularly male coworkers and classmates. He showed up uninvited to her apartment on weekends, claiming he wanted to surprise her with breakfast or flowers. When Angela suggested they slow down and see each other less frequently, Travis became hostile. He accused her of seeing someone else behind his back. He demanded access to her phone to check her text messages and social media accounts. He insisted that couples who truly cared about each other didn't keep secrets. I ended things after he followed me to my friend Rachel's house party and caused a scene, Angela said. He cornered Rachel in her kitchen and interrogated her about whether I was flirting with other guys at the party. Then he grabbed my arm and tried to drag me outside to discuss our relationship privately. Several people at the party had intervened, and Rachel's boyfriend had escorted Travis to his car and told him not to return. Angela had been mortified by the public confrontation and the way Travis had embarrassed her in front of her social circle. That was 6 weeks ago. I thought ending things clearly would make him move on, but instead, he became obsessed with winning me back. The stalking behavior had intensified after their breakup. Travis began leaving gifts on Angela's doorstep, flowers, handwritten letters, photographs he had taken of her without her knowledge during their brief relationship. The photographs were particularly disturbing because they showed her in private moments, walking to her car, talking on the phone, reading in her apartment courtyard, taken from hidden vantage points. The final straw was Tuesday night. Angela said, her voice barely above a whisper. I came home from work and found Travis sitting in his car in my assigned parking space. When I approached to ask him to move, he rolled down the window and started shouting about how I was ruining his life by rejecting him. Travis had threatened to make Angela's life as miserable as she had made his. He knew where she worked, where she shopped, where she exercised, and where her friends lived. He could make things very difficult for her if she continued refusing to give their relationship another chance. I called the police again, but by the time they arrived, Travis was gone. The officer said unless he actually makes a specific threat of violence or commits a crime, there's nothing they can do. Angela's voice grew stronger as she continued. That's when I decided I needed to disappear for a while. Travis doesn't know Sydney's address, so your apartment will be the perfect safe house until I can figure out a long-term solution. She had already researched the neighborhood around my supposed apartment. The building had good security, well-lit parking, and plenty of foot traffic that would deter Travis from lurking around. She had even driven by a few times to get familiar with the area and had spoken with some of the neighbors about package deliveries and visitor policies. I've been planning this move for about 10 days, Angela said. I gave my landlord notice, started packing non-essential items, and arranged for a moving truck this weekend. My mother looked impressed by Angela's proactive approach. It sounds like you've thought this through very carefully. I have, and Sydney's been so supportive throughout the whole process, Angela replied. We've been coordinating all the details through text messages. He even offered to help me get settled and introduce me to people in the building. I had not exchanged any text messages with Angela about moving arrangements. I had not offered to help her get settled. I had not volunteered to introduce her to neighbors in a building where I no longer lived. But Angela was looking at me with such genuine gratitude and relief that I realized she truly believed these conversations had taken place. She was not deliberately lying to our parents. She was repeating information that someone had given her, mistakenly believing that someone was me. My parents were nodding, approvingly impressed by how responsibly I was handling my sister's crisis. They had no idea that I knew nothing about these supposed text message conversations or moving arrangements. The bigger question was if Angela hadn't been texting with me about moving plans, who had she been communicating with? And who had given her permission to move into an apartment that I no longer occupied? My father cleared his throat and pushed his plate aside, signaling the transition from family concerns to practical business matters. This was his familiar dinner table manner when serious financial discussions were about to begin. Now that we've covered the emotional aspects of Angela's situation, we should address the practical arrangements, he said, pulling a small notebook from his shirt pocket. Your mother and I have been calculating the additional expenses that Sydney will be taking on. I watched him flip through pages of handwritten notes, apparently detailed financial projections that had been prepared without any input from me. The fact that they had been planning Angela's move for 10 days while treating it like breaking news at dinner was becoming clearer by the minute. The increased utility costs shouldn't be more than $30 to $40 monthly. My father continued reading from his calculations. Water, electricity, internet usage, that sort of thing. The grocery expenses will be more significant, probably an additional $200 to $250 monthly, depending on Angela's dietary needs. Angela nodded along as if these numbers had been previously discussed and agreed upon. I'm hoping to find work within the first few weeks so I can start contributing financially as soon as possible. We certainly don't want Sydney to bear the entire burden, my mother added. But until Angela gets back on her feet, we expect him to cover the basics. That's what families do during emergencies. My father turned to a fresh page in his notebook. We've also researched local job opportunities that might be suitable for Angela's background. Sydney, we thought you could help her with resume preparation and maybe introduce her to some of your professional contacts. The list he began reading included marketing positions, administrative roles, and customer service jobs within a 15-mile radius of my supposed apartment address. He had compiled salary ranges, application deadlines, and contact information for hiring managers. This research had clearly taken considerable time and effort. Some of these companies have connections to your software development industry, my father explained. We figured your recommendation could give Angela an advantage in the hiring process. I was amazed by the thoroughness of their planning and the assumptions they had made about my willingness to participate. They had not only decided how I would spend my money and adjust my living space, but had also volunteered my professional reputation and network contacts. My mother pulled out her own notes written on floral stationery that she typically used for thank you cards and social correspondence. I've been thinking about the emotional support Angela will need during this transition period. Sydney, you'll want to include her in your weekend activities so she doesn't feel isolated. The list she had prepared included social events, recreational activities, and family gatherings where Angela's presence would be expected. Movie nights, restaurant dinners, shopping trips, and visits with extended family members had all been scheduled around the assumption that I would be available and willing to provide companionship. We don't want Angela sitting alone in the apartment brooding about Travis, my mother explained. She needs positive distractions and social interaction to build her confidence back up. My father's expression grew more serious as he turned to another section of his notes. There's something else we need to discuss, and it's not easy to bring up. He explained that their financial situation had become significantly more complicated over the past year. The small accounting firm where he had worked for 15 years had lost several major clients to larger corporate competitors. His hours had been reduced from full-time to part-time, and his health insurance benefits had been eliminated entirely. We've been managing by cutting expenses and dipping into our savings account, he said. But with Angela's emergency situation, we simply can't afford to support her financially right now. My mother's eyes filled with tears as she described the difficult choices they had been facing. Their mortgage payment had increased when their home insurance rates went up. The roof needed repairs that they had been postponing for 2 years. My father's car required engine work that would cost more than the vehicle was worth. We feel terrible asking Sydney to take on Angela's expenses, my mother said. But he's the only family member in a position to help right now. Angela reached across the table to squeeze my hand. I promise this is temporary. As soon as I find work and save enough for security deposits and moving costs, I'll get my own place again. My father's financial calculations extended beyond Angela's immediate housing needs. He had been hoping that I might be willing to help with some of their household expenses as well, just until his work situation stabilized. We're not talking about major contributions, he said quickly. Maybe help with the grocery bill occasionally or assistance with car repairs when they come up. Nothing that would strain your budget, but enough to take some pressure off our monthly obligations. The pattern was becoming clear. My financial success had made me the family backup plan for everyone's economic challenges. Angela's housing crisis was just the beginning of a larger expectations game that my parents had been planning without my knowledge. My mother explained that they had already discussed my new support role with other family members. My uncle expected me to help my grandmother with her prescription costs since Medicare didn't cover all her medications. My cousin was hoping I could provide a character reference and maybe financial backing for a small business loan he wanted to apply for. Everyone knows how well you're doing in your career, my father said proudly. It makes sense that you would want to use your success to help family members who are struggling. They had calculated that my software development salary could easily accommodate these additional family responsibilities. They had researched average housing costs, estimated my monthly expenses, and concluded that I had substantial discretionary income available for family contributions. We know you're probably saving money for your own future, my mother said. But family needs come first, and right now the family needs your help. Angela looked genuinely moved by our parents' faith in my generosity and ability to solve everyone's problems. Sydney, I can't tell you how much this means to me. Knowing that you're willing to open your home and support me through this crisis makes me feel so much safer. The weight of their collective expectations was staggering. They had constructed an elaborate financial safety net with me as the primary support structure without asking whether I was willing or able to serve in that role. But there was a fundamental problem with their carefully crafted plan. They had based all these calculations and expectations on an apartment lease that I had already terminated. They were planning Angela's move to a place where I no longer lived. They were calculating utility costs and grocery expenses for a residence that was no longer mine. And they were about to discover that their backup plan had a very serious flaw. The person they were counting on to solve everyone's problems had been quietly building a completely different life in a completely different place with completely different priorities. A life that they knew nothing about. 3 weeks ago, I'd been standing in my old apartment kitchen making coffee before work when the breaking point finally arrived. It wasn't a dramatic moment or a sudden revelation. It was simply the accumulation of 28 years of having my space, my time, and my decisions treated as communal family property. That morning, I discovered my cousin Derek had been staying in my spare bedroom for the past 4 nights without anyone asking my permission. My mother had given him my apartment key during a family gathering I hadn't attended, telling him he could crash at my place while he looked for work in the city. I found Derek's belongings spread across my furniture, his dirty dishes in my sink, and his phone charger plugged into my bedroom outlet. When I called to ask my mother about this arrangement, she seemed surprised by my annoyance. "Derek needed somewhere to stay, and you have that extra room that nobody uses," she had said. "I didn't think you'd mind helping family." That phrase, "I didn't think you'd mind," had been the soundtrack of my adult life. When my aunt needed storage space for her holiday decorations, they filled my closet because they didn't think I'd mind. When my parents decided to host my grandfather's birthday party, they chose my apartment because the space was bigger and they didn't think I'd mind. I had minded for years, but I had never learned how to say no effectively. The morning I discovered Derek in my spare room, I finally understood that this pattern would continue forever unless I made a dramatic change. My family would keep making decisions about my life because I had trained them to believe that my preferences were always negotiable. That same week, I began researching apartments in different neighborhoods. I needed distance, both physical and emotional, from the family dynamic that had turned me into a perpetual solution to other people's problems. The apartment I found was perfect for my actual lifestyle rather than my family's expectations. Located in Harbor Point, a neighborhood 25 minutes across town from my old place, the complex was modern, secure, and populated primarily by young professionals who valued privacy and independence. My new apartment was smaller than my old one, with just one bedroom and a compact home office space. The conscious choice to eliminate the spare bedroom meant no family member could assume there was room for temporary house guests. The building required key card access and had a doorman who recorded all visitors, creating a natural barrier to unannounced family visits. The process of moving had been carefully planned to avoid family interference. I hired professional movers for a Tuesday morning when my parents would be at work and unlikely to drive by my old apartment unexpectedly. I arranged for my utilities to be disconnected and connected on the same day, leaving no gap that might prompt phone calls from confused service representatives. Most importantly, I had not given my new address to any family members. This decision felt radical because it meant I was deliberately keeping my family uninformed about a major life change. But it also felt necessary because I needed time to establish my independence before dealing with their reactions to my boundaries. The 3 weeks since moving had been the most peaceful of my adult life. My new morning routine included 20 minutes of coffee and reading on my balcony that overlooked a small courtyard garden. No family members appeared unannounced to borrow my car, use my internet, or ask for help with various projects. My evenings belonged to me completely, whether I wanted to cook an elaborate dinner, go for a run, or simply sit quietly and read. I'd also been able to focus more energy on my relationship with Sarah, the marketing director I had been dating for 8 months. Without the constant stream of family emergencies and obligations, I could be more present and attentive in our relationship. Sarah and I had met through a rock climbing group that I joined 6 months after starting therapy, with Dr. Richardson, a counselor who specialized in family dynamics and boundary issues. Dr. Richardson had suggested that I explore activities and social circles that existed independently from my family relationships. The rock climbing group had introduced me to people who knew me only as Sydney the software developer, not Sydney the family problem solver. Jake, a private investigator who became a close friend, had taught me basic outdoor climbing techniques while sharing stories about his work, helping people resolve complex personal situations. Through these new friendships, I discovered aspects of my personality that had been suppressed by family expectations. I enjoyed physical challenges, appreciated mechanical puzzles, and had a natural aptitude for strategic problem solving that extended beyond computer programming. Sarah had been impressed by my climbing abilities and curious about my thoughtful approach to relationships. She came from a family that respected individual autonomy and personal boundaries concepts that were foreign to my own family experience, but appealing to me as relationship models. Over the past few months, Sarah and I had developed a strong partnership built on mutual respect and shared interests. We enjoyed hiking, trying new restaurants, and attending outdoor concerts. She supported my professional goals and encouraged my creative hobbies. Most importantly, she understood that healthy relationships required maintaining individual identities alongside couple activities. Last month, I'd begun planning to propose to Sarah during our upcoming weekend trip to the mountains. I'd researched rings, identified a perfect location, and prepared a speech that expressed my commitment to building a life together, based on mutual choice rather than family obligation. The engagement ring was currently hidden in my bedroom closet, wrapped in a small velvet box that I looked at every morning while getting dressed for work. The decision to propose felt natural and exciting because it represented my first major life choice made completely independently from family input or expectations. My new apartment had also allowed me to focus more seriously on my career development. Without constant interruptions from family members needing various types of assistance, I had been able to complete a professional certification program that qualified me for senior developer positions. 3 weeks ago, the same week I moved apartments, I had received a promotion to lead software engineer with a significant salary increase. The new position included responsibility for managing a team of junior developers overseeing complex project implementations and collaborating with other departments on strategic technology initiatives. The promotion had boosted my confidence and confirmed that I was capable of high-level professional performance when I wasn't constantly distracted by family emergencies. My supervisor had praised my analytical skills, leadership potential, and ability to solve complex problems efficiently. But none of my family members knew about the promotion because they hadn't asked about my work in months. They were too focused on their own challenges to inquire about my professional achievements or personal growth. Sitting at the dinner table listening to my parents plan my financial support for Angela's housing crisis, I realized how completely my family misunderstood my current life situation. They were making assumptions based on outdated information about my apartment, my expenses, my priorities, and my availability. They had no idea that I had been quietly building a life centered around my own goals and relationships rather than family obligations. They were about to learn that their assumptions about my willingness to solve everyone's problems were no longer accurate. The question was whether they would be able to adjust to Sydney, the independent adult, or whether they would insist on maintaining Sydney, the family safety net. Tonight I was finally going to find out. I set my water glass down with a gentle clink against the wooden table and looked directly at my parents for the first time since dinner began. The conversation about financial arrangements and moving logistics came to a natural pause, creating the perfect opening for my announcement. "There's something I need to tell everyone," I said calmly. "Angela won't be moving into my apartment this weekend because I don't live there anymore." The silence that followed was so complete I could hear the grandfather clock ticking in the hallway. My father's pen stopped moving across his notebook. My mother's fork remained suspended halfway between her plate and her mouth. Angela stared at me with an expression of complete confusion. "What do you mean you don't live there anymore?" my mother asked slowly. "I moved 3 weeks ago to a different apartment in Harbor Point. None of you have my new address." My father closed his notebook and leaned forward. "Sydney, this isn't the time for jokes. Your sister has a serious situation that requires immediate help." "I'm not joking, Dad. I terminated my lease-hired movers and relocated to a completely different neighborhood. The apartment you've been planning Angela's move to no longer belongs to me." Angela's face had gone pale. "But we've been texting about the arrangements. You helped me research the neighborhood and plan the furniture layout. I haven't received any text messages from you about moving plans. I think someone else has been responding to your messages, but it wasn't me." My mother set down her fork and reached for her phone. "Sydney, show us your new address right now." This is too important for confusion. Instead of providing my address, I explained the pattern that had led to my decision to move without informing them. I described finding Derek in my apartment, discovering that my parents had been distributing my apartment key to various family members, and realizing that my living space had been treated as an extension of the family home. I needed boundaries, I said. I needed a space that belonged to me where family members couldn't appear unannounced or make decisions about how my resources should be used. My father's face was reddening with anger. "So you've been lying to us for 3 weeks?" "I wasn't lying. I simply didn't tell you I had moved. There's a difference." "There's no difference," my father shouted, slamming his hand on the table. "Family doesn't keep secrets about major life changes. Family doesn't abandon each other when someone needs help." My mother's eyes filled with tears. "Sydney, how could you do this? How could you let us plan Angela's entire future around something that wasn't real?" Angela was staring at her hands, processing the implications of my revelation. "If you moved 3 weeks ago, then who has been responding to my text messages?" That was an excellent question that none of us could answer. Angela pulled out her phone and scrolled through her message history, looking increasingly confused as she read the conversation she believed she had been having with me. "These messages are definitely coming from your phone number," she said. "Look, this is from yesterday." She showed me a text thread where someone using my phone number had confirmed moving truck arrival times, discussed grocery shopping plans, and reassured her about building security measures. The messages were written in a conversational style that sounded like me, but I had not sent any of them. "Angela, I need you to call that number right now," I said. She dialed my number while we all listened to see what would happen. The call went directly to voicemail, but the voicemail message was not my voice. "You've reached Sydney. Leave a message and I'll call you back when I can." The voice was male, roughly my age, but definitely not me. "What the hell is going on?" my father demanded. Angela was now scrolling through weeks of text messages, realizing that she had been communicating with someone who was impersonating me. The conversations included detailed discussions about apartment layouts, neighborhood safety measures, and emotional support during her crisis with Travis. "Whoever this is knows a lot about your old apartment," Angela said. They described the spare bedroom layout, perfectly knew which grocery stores were nearby, and even mentioned the parking situation. My mother was crying now, overwhelmed by the multiple revelations that were destroying the family's carefully constructed plan. "Sydney, even if you moved apartments, you could still help your sister. You could find her a different place to stay or help with hotel costs or something." "Mom, that's exactly the problem. You're already trying to solve Angela's crisis by volunteering my resources without asking what I'm willing and able to do." I explained that I cared about Angela's safety and wanted to help her escape Travis's harassment, but I was no longer willing to be the automatic solution to every family problem. "I've spent years having my time, my space, and my money treated as community property," I said. "I love this family, but I need relationships based on mutual respect rather than constant obligation." Angela looked up from her phone with a new expression of fear. "Sydney, if someone has been impersonating you for weeks, That means they know everything about my situation with Travis. They know I'm planning to disappear. They know when I'll be vulnerable. And they know I'll be expecting to move somewhere safe. The realization hit all of us simultaneously. Someone had been monitoring Angela's communications, learning her plans, and positioning themselves to intercept her at a moment when she would be completely defenseless. Angela's hands were shaking as she continued reading through the text messages. This person knew exactly what to say to gain my trust. They offered emotional support, practical help, and safety reassurance. They said everything I needed to hear. "Angela, we need to call the police right now," my mother said. But Angela was reading something on her phone that made her face go even paler. "There's more," she whispered. "There's something I didn't tell anyone about Travis." She looked around the table at our expectant faces, clearly struggling with whether to share additional information. "I'm pregnant." The second major bombshell of the evening landed like a physical blow. My mother gasped audibly. My father's anger immediately shifted to protective concern. I felt my stomach drop as the implications became clear. "Travis is the father," Angela continued. "I found out 2 weeks ago. I haven't told him because he threatened to kill me if I ever tried to leave him with his baby." She explained that Travis had made specific threats about what would happen if she became pregnant with his child. He viewed pregnancy as a permanent bond that would tie them together forever. He had explicitly stated that he would never allow her to raise his baby without him, and he would eliminate any threats to their family unit. "That's why I was so desperate to disappear completely," Angela said. "It's not just about escaping a stalker anymore. It's about protecting an unborn child from a dangerous father." The family crisis had just escalated from complicated to life-threatening. And whoever had been impersonating me knew about Angela's pregnancy, her moving plans, and her scheduled vulnerability. We were no longer dealing with just family boundary issues. We were dealing with a predator who had been carefully setting a trap. I pushed back from the dinner table and stood up, my mind immediately shifting into problem-solving mode. "Angela, turn off your phone right now. Don't send any more messages to that number." She powered down the device while I pulled out my own phone and called Jake, my friend from the rock climbing group, who worked as a private investigator. "Jake, it's Sydney. I need your professional help immediately. Are you available?" "Sure, what's going on?" I explained the situation quickly: Angela's pregnancy, Travis's threats, the impersonation scheme, and the immediate danger that Angela would be walking into if she proceeded with her original moving plan. "Bring Angela to my apartment right now," Jake said. "I have security cameras and a monitored alarm system. Then we need to contact Detective Martinez at the downtown precinct. She specializes in stalking cases and domestic violence situations." I turned to my family, who had been listening to my phone conversation with growing confusion and hope. "Angela, you're coming with me tonight? Not to live permanently, but to stay safe while we figure out a real solution to this situation." My mother started crying again, this time with relief. "Sydney, thank you. I was so scared that you were going to abandon her." "Mom, I'm not abandoning anyone. But I'm also not going back to the old pattern where family emergencies automatically become my responsibility to solve single-handedly." I explained that I had been learning about healthy boundary setting through therapy and new friendships. Helping Angela escape danger was different from enabling family dysfunction, and I was prepared to provide appropriate support without sacrificing my own independence. The difference is that this time we're going to handle Angela's crisis professionally instead of just moving the problem around between family members. My father looked confused. "What do you mean professionally?" I told them about my friendship with Jake, who had been investigating domestic violence and stalking cases for over 10 years. Through our rock climbing group conversations, I had learned about legal resources, safety protocols, and support systems that most people don't know exist. 3 months ago, I started volunteering with Sarah at a women's shelter, I said. Not because I anticipated Angela's situation, but because I wanted to use my time and skills to help people in productive ways. Through the volunteer work, I had met Detective Martinez, several domestic violence attorneys and social workers who specialized in helping people escape dangerous relationships safely. When you handle these situations correctly with proper documentation and legal support, the success rate for stopping stalkers is much higher than when families try to solve everything privately. Angela looked hopeful for the first time all evening. Sydney, do you really think there are people who can help stop Travis permanently? I know there are because I've been working with them for months. I explained that my volunteer work had taught me about restraining orders, criminal charges for harassment, and supervised housing programs for people escaping domestic violence. But first we need to figure out who has been impersonating me and why they targeted you specifically. Jake called back within 10 minutes. Sydney, I did some quick research on your old apartment address. The current tenant is a 26-year-old man named Marcus Webb. Does that name mean anything to anyone? Angela's face went white. Marcus is Travis's younger brother. The pieces were falling into place with horrifying clarity. Travis had been using his brother to monitor Angela's communications and manipulate her escape plans. Marcus had moved into my former apartment specifically to intercept Angela when she arrived with the moving truck. Travis knew that Angela was planning to disappear, I said. So he positioned his brother in the exact location where she thought she would be safe. Jake's voice was grim when I put the call on speaker. This level of planning indicates that Travis has been stalking Angela much more systematically than anyone realized. We need to treat this as an imminent threat situation. Detective Martinez agreed to meet us at Jake's apartment within an hour. In the meantime, Jake instructed us to gather any evidence of Travis's harassment photographs, text messages, voicemails, witness statements, and documentation of property damage. Angela, do you still have the flowers and letters that Travis left on your doorstep? I asked. She nodded. Everything is in a box in my car. I was planning to throw it away after I moved. Don't throw away anything. That's all evidence of stalking behavior. My parents were watching this conversation with amazement as their son, who they had always seen as the quiet, accommodating family member, took charge of a complex crisis with confidence and professional connections. Sydney, how did you learn about all this? My mother asked. By building a life outside the family bubble, I said. By making friends who work in different fields, by volunteering in my community, and by learning skills that matter in the real world. Over the past 8 months, I had been discovering capabilities and interests that had been suppressed by family expectations. The therapy, the volunteer work, and the new friendships had shown me that I could be effective at helping people when I chose to do so deliberately rather than being drafted into service automatically. The difference is that tonight I'm choosing to help Angela because I love her and want her to be safe, I said. I'm not helping because family obligations make my cooperation mandatory. Angela hugged me tightly. Sydney, I'm sorry that our family has been taking advantage of you. I never realized how much pressure we were putting on you until tonight. My father cleared his throat awkwardly. Son, I owe you an apology too. We assumed you would always be available to solve family problems without asking whether that was fair to you. My mother nodded tearfully. We were so focused on immediate emergencies that we forgot to consider your feelings and your own life goals. I appreciate that, I said. And after we handle Angela's safety situation, I'd like all of us to attend some family therapy sessions to learn better ways of supporting each other. Dr. Richardson had been encouraging me to invite my family to joint sessions when I felt ready to address our relationship patterns directly. But right now we need to focus on stopping Travis and making sure Angela and her baby are protected. Jake called again with an update. I contacted my friend at the phone company. Marcus Webb has been using a number spoofing app to impersonate Sydney's phone number. We have documentation of the technical fraud, which gives Detective Martinez additional charges to work with. Angela gathered the evidence box from her car while I packed an overnight bag for her. My parents offered to follow us to Jake's apartment and wait until Detective Martinez arrived to ensure that Angela was in safe hands. As we prepared to leave, my mother squeezed my hand. Sydney, I'm proud of the man you've become. I'm sorry it took a crisis for me to see how capable and thoughtful you are. Thanks, Mom. And after we get through this situation, Angela and I can have a real conversation about ways I can help that work for both of us. My father shook my hand formally. Son, your family is lucky to have you. For the first time in my life, I felt like my family saw me as an independent adult whose support was valuable precisely because it was freely chosen rather than automatically expected. Tonight we were going to stop Travis permanently, and tomorrow we were going to start building healthier family relationships based on mutual respect. 6 weeks later, I stood in the courthouse hallway watching Travis being led away in handcuffs after his sentencing hearing. Detective Martinez had built an overwhelming case against him, stalking criminal threats, identity fraud harassment, and violation of a restraining order. The judge sentenced him to 2 years in prison, followed by 5 years of supervised probation with a permanent no-contact order. Angela squeezed my hand as the courtroom doors closed behind Travis. I can't believe it's finally over. It's over because you were brave enough to testify and because we had the right people helping us, I replied. The past month and a half had been transformative for our entire family. Angela had moved into a transitional housing program specifically designed for pregnant women escaping domestic violence. The program provided security counseling, job training, and medical care in a supportive community environment. I love having my own space again, Angela had told me during our weekly coffee meetings. But this time, it feels different because I'm not running away from something. I'm building towards something. The program had helped Angela develop a realistic budget, establish career goals, and prepare for single parenthood with confidence rather than fear. She was currently working part-time at a nonprofit organization while completing an online marketing certification program. The best part is that I'm making decisions about my own life instead of having other people solve my problems for me, she said. Angela's transformation had inspired changes throughout our family system. My parents had begun attending therapy sessions with Dr. Richardson to learn about respecting adult children's boundaries and offering support without creating dependency. We realized that we weren't actually helping anyone by constantly fixing problems, my mother explained during our last family session. We were preventing everyone from developing their own problem-solving skills. My father had taken a part-time job with a different accounting firm while building a freelance client base. Instead of relying on family members to subsidize their financial shortfalls, my parents were creating sustainable solutions to their economic challenges. It feels good to be self-sufficient again, my father said. I'm proud that my children are successful, but I don't want to burden them with my responsibilities. The family therapy sessions had helped all of us learn the difference between healthy support and enabling dysfunction. We practiced asking for help appropriately, offering assistance without resentment, and respecting each other's autonomy in decision-making processes. My relationship with Sarah had deepened throughout the crisis as she witnessed my ability to handle complex family situations while maintaining clear boundaries. Her admiration for how I had protected Angela while refusing to return to old family patterns had strengthened our partnership significantly. 3 weeks ago, during our planned mountain hiking trip, I proposed to Sarah at sunrise, overlooking Valley Creek. Her acceptance felt like the natural next step in building a life together based on mutual choice and shared values. I love that you fought for your independence before committing to a relationship with me, Sarah had said. It shows that you're choosing to be with me because you want to be, not because you need someone to rescue you from family obligations. We were planning a small wedding for next fall with both families invited as guests who would celebrate our union rather than attempting to manage our decisions. My career had continued flourishing as well. The promotion to lead software engineer had led to additional opportunities for professional development and leadership training. My supervisor had recommended me for a senior management track that could lead to significant advancement within the next 2 years. Sydney has demonstrated excellent judgment under pressure, my supervisor had written in my performance review. His ability to solve complex problems while maintaining positive relationships makes him an ideal candidate for increased responsibility. The success at work felt meaningful because it reflected my own capabilities rather than family expectations about what I should achieve. Jake and I had become close friends through our shared experience helping Angela escape Travis's harassment. Our rock climbing group had evolved into a broader social circle that included Sarah, Angela, and several other friends who shared our interests in outdoor activities and community service. It's been amazing to watch you discover who you are when you're not constantly putting out family fires, Jake had observed. The volunteer work at the women's shelter had become a regular part of my routine. Sarah and I spent Saturday mornings helping with various programs teaching financial literacy, providing technology support, and organizing recreational activities for residents. Working with domestic violence survivors has taught me so much about the difference between healthy relationships and controlling ones, Sarah said. It makes me appreciate what we have together. Angela had also begun volunteering at the shelter, sharing her experience with other women who were escaping dangerous relationships. I want them to know that you can survive this and build a completely different life, Angela explained. I never thought I'd be grateful for what Travis put me through, but it taught me how strong I really am. Her pregnancy was progressing normally, and she was excited about becoming a mother on her own terms. The baby was due in 3 months, and Angela had chosen to name her daughter Hope, symbolizing the new beginning she was creating. I'm not scared about raising her alone anymore, Angela said. I have a support system now that's based on genuine care instead of obligation. My parents had asked for permission to be involved grandparents without overstepping boundaries. They were attending parenting classes to learn about supporting new mothers appropriately, and they had offered to help with babysitting on Angela's schedule, rather than assuming unlimited access. We want to be helpful without being intrusive, my mother said. We're learning to ask what Angela needs instead of telling her what we think she should do. The experience had taught all of us that real love requires respecting other people's autonomy and supporting their growth rather than controlling their decisions. Last Sunday's family dinner had been completely different from the evening 6 weeks earlier when this crisis began. We gathered at my parents' house, but the conversation focused on sharing updates about our individual lives rather than solving each other's problems. Angela talked about her job training progress and her excitement about decorating the nursery in her new apartment. My parents shared stories about their therapy insights and my father's growing freelance business. Sarah and I discussed our wedding planning and our upcoming hiking trip to Colorado. This feels like a real family dinner, Angela observed. Everyone gets to be themselves instead of playing roles in other people's dramas. My mother had prepared everyone's favorite foods without assuming that family obligations required attendance or gratitude. The evening felt warm and connected without being suffocating or demanding. As I sat around the table with my family and my fiancé, I reflected on how much had changed since that shocking announcement about Angela moving into my apartment. The crisis had forced all of us to confront dysfunctional patterns and learn healthier ways of relating to each other. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for family is refuse to enable their dysfunction, I realized. When I finally protected my own boundaries, I became capable of offering real help instead of just being a band-aid for everyone else's problems. Angela was thriving in her independence, my parents were rebuilding their financial stability, and I was free to choose how and when to provide family support. The relationships felt stronger because they were based on mutual respect rather than automatic obligation. True family support builds each other up rather than tearing each other down. When people know they can count on appropriate help during genuine emergencies, they're more likely to develop their own problem-solving skills for everyday challenges. The evening ended with Angela showing us ultrasound photos of baby Hope and sharing her plans for the nursery in her new apartment 3 blocks from my complex. We would be close enough to support each other while maintaining our separate, independent lives. As Sarah and I drove home to our apartment in Harbor Point, I felt grateful for the courage to change dysfunctional family patterns and the opportunity to build relationships based on healthy boundaries and genuine care. 6 weeks ago, I had been dreading another family obligation. Tonight, I was looking forward to becoming an uncle to a little girl who would grow up knowing that love and respect go hand in hand. What family patterns have you had to change in order to build healthier relationships? Have you ever had to choose between keeping the peace and protecting your own boundaries? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for listening to my story about learning to support family members without losing myself in their crises. If this resonated with you, please like this video, subscribe for more stories about setting healthy boundaries, and share with anyone who might benefit from hearing about the difference between helping and enabling. Remember that the people who truly love you will respect your boundaries, even if it takes them time to understand why those boundaries are necessary.